it's going to be lightweight, not too
Everyone
much.
can be.
We'll see.
Find a spot. So bright.
See, my cursor is still
Right.
on there. But, oh well.
The final talk in this room, pretty much. We're gonna talk about beer. Hey! Yeah. Stay with us for a while. You'll get some later, I hope. Please give it up for Mattijs.
So, okay, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. To not only the last talk, but also, I think, the talk with maybe the longest title. So those of you who got triggered by the words cold beer at the end, there won't be any cold beer at this talk, actually. Sorry for that. Drinks are in about an hour, I think. But instead, I'm going to talk about a project I did once. And it's one of my projects I like very much. I still do some small work for it. And it has to do with beer, so yeah. So about me, for those who don't know me, I'm Mattijs. And from a young age, I always liked building stuff. And like most engineers, you know, the Legos. And at some point, Lego had this programming set as well. I started playing around with that, and then turned into some actual programming. And I also liked playing soccer. Not at the time, currently, but I ended up logically studying computing science and joining a soccer club, a student soccer club in Groningen, called the Knickerbockers, named after the New York Knicks. And the reason I'm telling this is because they are, you could say, the customer for this project. And at the time, they had a bit of a problem, like bol.com. They were growing very fast. We're up to 500 people, 20 soccer teams. And they had become the third biggest consumer of beer of Bavaria, for those who know them. So imagine that you are the treasurer of this club and you have to be responsible for cash flow. At the time, it was all done via pen and paper. And that's, that's a risk. Because there was another challenge, and it was being students, utter chaos at moments. And, well, the picture on the right might not give a very nice picture, image of students, but it would always be gone the next morning. But what also would be gone were the receipts of the cash register, because it was on paper, and you know, things happen. And at that point, the cash flow revenue was growing to 200,000 euros a year. So yeah, you don't want to lose that. So they said, okay, we can't do this anymore. We're going digital. So they bought these smart tabs that you could talk to over the network. And they got some software from the supplier, and that way everything was nicely on the computer. But it did have some limitations on the software, so we talked to the supplier and said, yo, can we maybe get some new functionality in here? And the supplier, who was more of an installation and beer kind of guy, he liked the idea, but he didn't have the time, and said, you know, write your own. I'll give you the documentation, have fun, and let me know what you come up with. Well, liking to build stuff and, you know, debugging in production with a beer tap, yeah, we said, okay, this is something we're going to do, definitely. Yeah, so what did we build? We didn't touch the hardware. I mean, those were quite expensive, and you really don't want to tell people, I'm sorry, but we broke the beer tap. But we did start out with a simple web interface for the volunteers behind the bar, because like most soccer clubs and bol.com as well, volunteers very important behind your bar. And one of the things you can see behind me are two of these little gauges, because there was a custom at the time. If you would have a special occasion, or maybe you won a match, or you showed up with 11 people, you would say, you know, I'm going to buy beer, buy a whole keg, 50 liters, and enjoy. And the custom was then to put a big traffic light on green, and you could order your beer for free at the bar. But with two digital taps, it's quite tricky to connect one keg. So what we did was we changed the software a bit so that it could distribute 50 liters across both tabs, and it would show the gauges, and you could see how much was remaining, so that the volunteers behind the bar knew what to expect and when to switch back to paying customers again. So that obviously needed a backend as well. and we rewrote the software that did the actual communication with a serial port and some Zigbee. I'll come back to that in a bit. And yeah, okay, this was all running on a local machine in the canteen, which was also used for music, and it was very old, and people would put their beer next to it. So yeah, the entire club's administration was on this single point of failure. We thought, okay, let's not keep our data here. So you know what, we have a website, we have a web hosting, let's push the data over there. And then we can also build some reports for the treasurer. And you could log in and you know, get a bit of an overview of how much beer had been drank the previous day, but also who still had to pay for the keg of 50 liters. So yeah, it's probably not readable, but you can see at 9 o'clock in the morning, a couple of hundreds of beer have been tapped, and you could keep track like that. But this is all really functional, and it is really useful for the people who have to do the finance. But you know, you're doing a hobby project, and even though you get paid in beer, you still want to have some fun as well. So I mentioned the traffic light. You know, we had this big physical traffic light someone showed up with. I don't know how it got there. No idea. But anyway, if it was on green, you could get your drinks for free, and if it's red, you pay. But someone had to flip a switch, and then someone would forget to flip it back, and you end up and you expect free beer, and they say, no, you have to pay because it's all gone. So we got this little USB relay, and we hooked it up to our system because, well, we're now in control from software. So we got the relay, and we put it near the power socket, and now we're able to control the traffic light, either being red or green, from the software itself. So it would always be in sync. But that's not good enough. We can do a bit more. Because to see this traffic light, you have to be in the same area as the bar. But being a soccer club, we have 4 of these fields, a couple of 100 yards away. So, you know, we have a mobile application, right? With some basic news and when to play our match. But yeah, Google had this thing called Google Cloud Messaging at the time. I think they replaced it with something else by now. But yeah, it was new for us, so let's play around with it. We have our web hosting, let's connect it, and now you can get a push notification on your mobile phone. So not only you know, oh, there's free beer, but you also know the occasion, who paid for it, and if you're not in the area, you could jump on your bike and, well, you would have about 3 or 4 minutes, and then otherwise, you know, would be gone again. And we did a lot of these small things as well, goofing around and just trying new things. The thing I enjoyed most, though, was, as I mentioned, is the serial communication, really on the hardware level, because they had this beer control, it says, well, I guess it's obvious what it does, which was connected through a serial port. And the supplier said, okay, your documentation, enjoy. But like all documentation, it was old, totally useless. So we thought, okay, we can do something else. We hooked up a little program to monitor the traffic going over the serial port. So basically, you tap beer, and you get some traffic. So on the left is the beer, on the right is the representation of a beer to the computer. And now it was just a matter of figuring out what this all meant. Well, we already knew this was a Zigbee protocol being used, and this is hexadecimal, but maybe we can make it a bit more readable using ASCII. Well, that won't work for everything, but it turned out there were some pointers in the traffic. Being a network device, we see these casts showing up. We actually see multiple of them. So I thought, okay, that's something we can look into and use Google. And well, sure enough, one of the first hits was a Russian PDF file on networking. And if you're hacking and you get a Russian PDF file, I guess you're going in the right direction. So yeah, okay, let's go with that. And we went back to our traffic. And now we had a key to decipher it a bit further. So yeah, we had the cast part, the readable part. But when we found out about control characters and the indicators for the start and the end of a message. And by using that, we could actually find out what part was the actual payload. So this should be something that's telling us about the state of the system and what's going on. So we isolated that and then by drafting a lot of beers, we could see the difference between payloads. And at some point, you get a beer, you get a message, you get another beer, you get another message, and you see, well, this little hexadecimal nibble incremented by 1. Wow. Probably being a counter. I'll get another beer, and sure enough, it incremented by 1 again. Right, so okay, now we isolated one little part and keeping going like that and using the software to change a bit of settings and stuff. We were able to break down the entire protocol, at least the parts that we wanted to use. So that was really the part I liked the most personally, because you're in the canteen itself, you're just working in production. You know, so that's fun, and all the other little things. So the reason I'm actually telling this story, it's not only because I like to do that, but for those who were here last year, might have remembered Mike Chernev mentioned about hobby project being actually something that's very good for you as an engineer itself. And you know, while working on this project, and we were, I guess, starting computer science students at the time, you get in touch with a lot of different technical things, and some very barely, and some quite in depth. But you learn a lot, right? So you're having fun, and at the same time, all this new technology that you learn about. So that's really something that I strongly believe that, of course, you can do a tutorial and you learn from books, and that's all the basic stuff. But if you really want to get into the details and really start to train yourself to use something, the best way is to simply build something. It doesn't really matter. And the hobby project allows you to control the context of what you're building. So we had this amazing sandbox to play around with, 500 students, with only one rule: don't break the flow of the beer. And as long as we maintained that rule, we could basically do whatever we want. And there was one other real big benefit of having an actual customer, let's say, is that someone thinks about it, someone drives you, but also someone gives feedback. It has to be usable. And basically every Saturday we would have a Korean night with a lot of drunk students giving honest feedback. Like we have at Bold.com every now and then as well. Right, so it doesn't really matter what you do, just find something, find a project, think about what you want to learn maybe, or just build something functional and see what happens, doesn't matter. But in the end, it's both fun and really, really valuable to learn. So that was what I wanted to tell. I think that we're about half an hour away from the actual drinks now. And with that, I would like to thank you for listening. I think we have some time for questions as well.
I think we have time for one question from the audience. Everyone's thirsty? Yes, there's...
Oh, yeah. So I threw this one in the presentation before this, and I think someone still has a hurting head. Oh, that one better, okay.
Okay, that's one.
Yeah.
Did you work alone on the project, or did other people help you?
No, yeah, I mentioned we sometimes, and changed the title as well. A good friend of mine who was in the same soccer team and also ended up in IT, we worked on it together. We challenged each other a bit. For those paying a lot of attention, it said Delphi at some point, which we used for the backend software. Something I would never have chosen to use, didn't even know of its existence at the time. But he knew it, and he said, okay, let's just try. And yeah, so we worked together as a pair on it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thank you, Mattijs.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so everyone will be... Yeah, throw it back. It's fine. Oh, easy, easy. Okay, we have a little time to set up. Then we have some closing words, and everyone will be coming back here. So please stay seated, and we'll be back to you in a second.